Our next speaker for the motion, the United Nations is terminally paralysed, the democratic world needs a forum of its own. We have Robert Kagan, one of the foremost conservative thinkers in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Kagan.
There are no UN bashers on this panel. And I, too, would like to see the UN function as it was meant to function, and hope that it someday will. The question is, if in some respects it can be admitted that it is paralyzed on some critical issues, can we talk about another international organization that would not replace the UN, because there is no replacing the UN, but an organization that could complement the UN, that could, in fact, at times help the UN to act on issues that we deem important, but which there is simply no way to avoid a deadlock at the Security Council. I don't know whether terminal paralysis is the right term to describe it. I'm sure we can see the fingers move now and then. But regardless of that, my question is the UN so weak that it cannot tolerate the existence of another new international organization? Is it in such perilous condition that it cannot tolerate the formation of an international organization designed to meet the demands and the new realities of the 21st century? Is democracy limited to the West? Of course not. Where is the forum where the countries of Europe and the United States and Canada meet as democracies with Brazil, with Japan, with India? Can there not be a forum that recognizes that in our 21st century, democracy is a global phenomenon that crosses cultural boundaries, that crosses religious boundaries, and that certainly crosses geographical boundaries? Can the UN, can my colleagues on this panel not tolerate the existence of such an institution that can provide a greater sense of solidarity at a time when democracy is under threat? Let me spend my last minute answering a couple of the charges. The problem about Russia and China. Well, for one thing, I have to say, as anyone who supports the UN Security Council complaining about exclusivity, I find that rather odd, because there is no more exclusive body in the world, and quite arbitrarily so, than the 5 permanent veto-wielding members of the UN Security Council. But I will say this final point. The League of Democracies would not be exclusive, because Russia can be a member if it becomes a democracy, and China can be a member if it becomes a democracy.
Our next speaker against the motion is Sir Jeremy Greenstock, one of Britain's most respected and well-known and most experienced diplomats. He was Britain's ambassador to the United Nations and also served as the UK Special Envoy to Iraq. Sir Jeremy Greenstock.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's lovely to be able to lay the blame for a period of crisis on the United Nations. Perhaps I could add to this warm feeling of transferred responsibility by mentioning a whole host of issues where things are going wrong. The UN has inefficient processes, fails to appoint good enough people, is full of groups and members pushing their own selfish interests. We would never, of course, accuse the European Union of having such characteristics. But terminally paralysed? This is the organisation that feeds nearly 100 million people a year through the World Food Programme, supports children through UNICEF in every member state of the United Nations, cares for over 30 million refugees through UNHCR, provides the structure for all your air and sea travel and all your international postal arrangements, is the repository for all international treaties, has brought dozens of countries out of the colonial era to a sustainable independence, the most recent being East Timor in 2001. The UN is the seat of international legitimacy and justice. If on a specific issue the UN is paralysed, it's because its members are paralysed. But the nub of this debate is the League of Democracies. To look for an alternative in a League of Democracies has a comforting ring about it. In the contentious world, let's have a club of people like us. But what does this achieve? Most of the things which worry us have to do with people who are not like us. Do we stop talking to them? Do we bomb them? And where do we draw the line on who is a democracy? Do we include the world's largest democracy, India? The Indians may have something to say about being on our side of the dividing line, or indeed on the other side of a dividing line. Do we include Palestine, where there was a fair election in January 2006, the result of which we rejected as inconvenient? The UN is our only global institution, and it is there to be built on. At the political level, it's a forum, a process, above all an opportunity, not a whipping boy or an escape route. A club of democracies is leading in the wrong direction for a world with real cross-cultural global problems. Thank you.
Sir Jeremy Greenstock, thank you very much.